These 5 lies are holding you back from success. So I can remember in my 12th grade year of high school, I remember going to tutoring, which is where I spent a lot of my time because I was an introvert. I remember going to tutoring and sitting down, eating my lunch, just, enjoying my day, right? Enjoying my lunch just like any 12th grader would. And I can remember sitting there and hearing 2 kids beside me talking about college. And more specifically, these were 2 students that were in like the AP classes, IB classes, right? Like the really, really smart classes. And at the time, I was just in all regular classes. And I remember them talking about this one school, Clemson University, right? This is one of the biggest schools in South Carolina. And I remember them talking about it and talking about how hard it was to get in and how they think that they might not even get in. And I was sitting there thinking like, yo, if these 2 really, really smart kids are worried that they won't get into Clemson University, there's no way I can get into Clemson University. So I never even thought about trying to apply or anything. And I didn't. I honestly didn't apply to Clemson. I applied to 2 other small schools, got into one and said, hey, might as well go, right? And here's the thing about that story. A few years later, once I graduated from the smaller school, I decided I need to get my master's and specifically get my master's in school counseling. And I started to research some schools in the state, and I saw a few that caught my eye, one of them being Clemson University. So I remember applying and going to the interview, and when I was at the interview, I was the only person that looked like me at the interview. I was one of 3 guys, and in total, there's probably like 60 people there. But then also, I was probably one of only 2 people that was of color, right? African American, if you will. So I felt very out of place, very out of place. And I can remember thinking after the interview, man, I hope I get in. And I remember a few weeks later getting an email that simply said, congratulations, you've been accepted into Clemson University. And I was like, yo, this is crazy, man. I started calling my dad, like, yo, dad, I got into Clemson University. And what's crazy about that is that growing up, me, my dad, my entire family, we love South Carolina, which is one of the biggest rivals, is the biggest rival to Clemson University. So imagine that, you love Alabama, right? And you find out that you got accepted into Auburn, or that you love UF and you end up going to UM, right? Or FSU. It was a big rival and it was a big shock that I got accepted into this school. And I can remember going through the program and being a little anxious because I'm sitting in this program and I had thoughts that I had back in the past. It was thoughts like, man, these students are probably all in AP classes, IB classes, or they graduated with honors and mega cum laude. I was like, man, these are probably some really smart kids. Like, I really need to step my game up. And the first class that I took, I actually got a B in it, right? And you may think, what's wrong with the B? Well, in your master's program, specifically this one, you weren't allowed to get C's. And if you've got multiple C's, you'll put on probation and then eventually you'll be kicked out the program. So you had to get A's in this program. It was that type of thing, if you will. So long story short, I spent 2 years at Clemson University, made a lot of great friends, went to a lot of great football games, right? Had a blast, man. And I love Clemson for that. And at the end of the day, I graduated. And I can remember at that point thinking back to when I was a senior in high school, how some kids were saying, man, Clemson is a hard school to get in. I don't know if I can get in. And they were just talking about undergraduate school. But here I am, getting my master's degree from Clemson University. Again, one of the top schools in South Carolina, one of the top schools in the country, to be honest. And that was real big for me. That showed me that there's something within inside of me that can actually do great things, especially if I put myself forward, if I put myself out there. And the same is true for you as well. So in this podcast, I want to go over some lies that you're telling yourself that's keeping you stuck, that's keeping you from achieving success. And I'm gonna give you guys ways to get out of that. So one of the biggest lies, and probably the most common, one of the most common ones that I hear is the lie of, I'm not ready yet. If I had $1 every time I heard that, dude, I'd probably be buying a piece of the Knicks or a piece of the Miami Dolphins or a piece of the New York Jets. Like, I'd be an owner of something, right? Something big on that magnitude. Like, that's how often I hear that phrase. And if you had $1 for every time you said that, I mean, you'd be right there with me, probably buying the same stuff. That is a common story. And here's the thing. To try to stop your mind from saying that, from telling you that, I mean, it's a losing battle, to be honest. And I love telling you guys this. I love telling my clients this. But hey, your mind is designed to protect you. And it's going to do a very great job of doing that because he needs you, or she needs you to live. So why would they put their number one asset in danger, right? You wouldn't do that, right? So what you're going to do is you're going to do everything you can to protect them, even if that means showing and saying every nasty thing that's in the book. That's what the mind is designed to do. So when you try to step outside of your comfort zone, something's going to go off in your mind, kind of like an alarm, kind of like a smoke detector saying, yo, this can go bad. You're going to fail. What if this happens? And that's what a lot of times stops us from taking that first step. But I love telling people this. Well, aren't you failing right now by not taking a step forward? And when I say that, I don't really get the whoa type of response because it's true. Right now, if you're not taking actions towards your goal, you're falling back. I believe it was either Einstein or some famous philosopher. He said either you're growing or you're dying. Either you're growing or you're regressing. There is no middle ground. So what are you doing? Are you growing or are you regressing? Now, here's the thing. The mind is only going to work on the previous and the current data points that it has in order to make decisions about the future. What do I mean by that? Well, your mind is a collection machine. It's like a computer that has this CPU or this RAM or this gigabyte, like all that stuff, right? The storage stuff, like it stores everything that has happened to you and everything that's been said to you. And right now, it's going through the files and it's looking at everything that's happened to you up until this day. And what that does is that it puts a limit on you. Your mind will put a limit on what you can do. That is why it's so important to be able to learn how to step outside of the mind and acknowledge that the mind and the person that's noticing the mind are two totally separate entities. They are two totally separate things. And by seeing that, it gives you the ability to take action that the mind doesn't want you to take, thus making you limitless. That is the goal, guys. By making yourself limitless, you start to prove that, hey, your mind is just a thing of the past. It's a thing that, all of us have is this 3,000-year-old device that's still working with prehistoric data. Like, that's what it is. And because of that, it's going to try to keep you safe. And that's not what we want. That's not what you want. That's why it's so important for us to use our imagination and to be curious. I love telling you a story about this guy named Roger Bannister. And I want to encourage you to actually Google him. But Roger Bannister, he was a track runner. And in the 1950s, there was a myth, there was a story, an idea that someone couldn't run a mile in under 4 minutes. There was even people that said that if someone were to try it, their heart would explode, they would die, they would pass out. It was up there with the idea of you can fly, right? Or you can't fly. I'm sorry, like you can't fly, or there's the saying when pigs fly, things like that, right? Like that was the belief. But one day, one guy named Roger Bannister, he actually challenged that. And he ended up running a mile. In 1954, he ran a mile in 3 minutes and 59 seconds. And here's the thing, that's not even the best part. Well, it's the best part was that shortly after, maybe a week, maybe a few weeks after that, another person broke that mile record, right? They ran it in 3 minutes and 58 seconds. And then shortly after that, someone else broke it. And then just again and again and again, people were just breaking this mile marker, right? This four mile mark, just again and again and again. And what that said was that when someone sees that it is possible, all the limits that they place on themselves, they go out the window. And I'm trying to tell you right now that the mind, it will play these tricks on you because it wants to keep you safe. And if you can step outside of the mind, and you just do that by simply acknowledging it, right? Acknowledge it for what it is. When you do that, you start to see that you don't have to obey everything that the mind says. So what this means for you is that, hey, you may not be fully ready, but that's okay. You can trust yourself to get through this storm because you've been through previous storms. And also there's a good chance that you have a team of people that can help you to get through any storm that you go through. So take the chance and you learn a lot about yourself by doing that. The second biggest lie that I see a lot of people tell themselves is that it simply costs too much. How often do you say that, right? That, I wish I could, but it costs too much. Or I wish I could, but I don't have the money for it right now. If I had a dollar every time I heard that, man, I could probably pay for the sessions for them, right? Like that's just how a lot of people are programmed. And here's the thing about that. It is a lie because there's a lot of times you go out there and you spend that exact same money on something else. And a lot of times this is for our pleasure. So I love talking about the four domains of life. And the four domains of life include career and education. So that's one. Relationships, that's two. Personal growth and personal health, that's three. And then leisure time, that's four. And what I challenge my clients to do at times is to look at the leisure category and ask themselves, how much money have I spent this month in just simply leisure? Now, that's not to say that leisure isn't important, but if your leisure budget is drastically outweighing your personal growth, personal health budget, or even your career and education, or any of the other ones that I mentioned, then there may need to be some recalculating that we need to do, some rebalancing that we need to do. Because here's the thing, guys. If you do not plan for the future, you will be falling behind so far that you will not be able to catch up to where you thought you would be, where you want to be, or even where you dream of being. So what we have to do is we have to put first things first. I love telling people things like this, right? I'll give you an example, right? So if you were to invest in Apple, right? Apple obviously is one of the biggest companies out there, right? Then Microsoft is like one or two. If you were to invest it in Apple, let's say $1,000, 5 years ago, at this moment, that $1,000 will be worth almost $5,000. That's valuable. But at the time, maybe you spent that $1,000 on maybe a vacation, right? Maybe you had an awesome day at the mall, or maybe you went to a casino or something, right? Maybe it's broken up into a lot of other things, if you will. But here's the thing, guys. Being cheap is very expensive. Not investing in yourself is very expensive. I'll give you another example. If you were to, let's say a doctor, right? Let's say you were to go to a doctor who was the cheapest. There may be a chance that he gives you the wrong diagnosis, and from there he gives you the wrong medication. And from there, you're still suffering with the same illness that you came into the hospital with, right? That you came into the doctor's office with. Let's say contractors. Let's say you were to say, man, I just want to find the cheapest contractor so that when I sell this house, I'll be in the positive, right? Well, that contractor, he could probably do a slack job, a lazy job, a bad job, right? Then the inspector comes and say, hey, all of this electrical, all of this, plumbing, whatever it is totally wrong and you have to redo it. And guess what you're going to have to do? You're going to have to find someone else to do it, right? Because I know you're not going to get the same person to redo it. So you have to think about it, right? Like, what is it that I'm paying for? Because I don't want you guys to be cheap. By being cheap, you're putting yourself behind the eight ball, and that's going to eventually catch up to you. So don't kick the can down the road. Go ahead and invest in yourself. Invest in whatever it is that you need help with. Even when it comes to hiring people, if you're in that position, hiring the cheapest talent, right? Sometimes even I have to go and I have to hire people to do like subcontract work for me, or to even coach me on things. If I use the cheapest person as a measure to decide whether I do it or not, I'm gonna find myself running around in circles, losing time and money. So one of the biggest lies here, number two, is that it costs too much. And chances are it doesn't cost too much. It's just that you're not prioritizing it. And as a side note, when I say it, right? When I say it costs too much, what am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about maybe classes, coaches, conferences, right? Things that's gonna help move your life forward. Things that's gonna help shorten the timeline from you starting a goal to completing it. Whatever it is that you need to buy it so that you can fast forward your process, right? Fast forward your growth so that you can accomplish this goal and move on to the next one. And then number three, a big lie, right? Sometimes I may say this to myself and I gotta really catch myself when I say this. But number three, one of the biggest lies keeping you from success is, I'll do it later. How many times have you said, I'll do that later? That's something that can definitely catch up to you if you're not careful. And what I love helping me with this is by just simply giving tasks, items that I need to accomplish, a due date. And not only give it a due date, sometimes if I have goals for the day, so right now you may not see me, but right in front of me, I have a list of about 7 bullet points, 7 tasks that I need to complete. And they all have time frames beside them. And by doing that, I can now see, well, what is it that I'm doing well to help me to hit this time point, right? This timestamp. But also I can look to see what is it that's getting in my way. And something that I actually noticed was that when I finished my individual sessions, I would take these long breaks. And from there, I wasn't able to get back into a flow quick enough to start a task before I had to get into my next session. But I wouldn't know that unless I was focused on it. So give everything a timestamp. Something that I also would challenge you to do is to pull out your phone right now and Google this thing called the Eisenhower Time Matrix. This is by far one of my favorite things to share. The Eisenhower Time Matrix helps you to decide what things are important versus urgent, right? So in the matrix, when you click it, all you have to do is Google it and hit images, and you'll see a few images there. But what it does is it breaks tasks into 4 quadrants. Things in quadrant 1 are typically things that are important and urgent, okay? So this could be someone like banging on your door and saying, hey, like I need you right now to go do X, Y, Z, right? You can't really avoid that, right? Well, you can, but that's another story. Quadrant number 2, things here, they typically be important, but not urgent. So this is things like your health, for example, right? It could be, booking your next session with your therapist, if you will. Anything that's going to push your life forward, investing, right? Things of that nature. Quadrant 3 is where things are typically urgent, but not important, okay? So that could be a long list of things like emails. Like if I sat and responded to every email as soon as it came, it'll definitely get in my way. Like it's important, but it's not an urgent thing that I need to do now. And then quadrant 4 is things that are not important and not urgent. So this could be scrolling on social media. By placing my task in each of these boxes, by even keeping that idea in my mind, it helps me to spend enough time in quadrant 2, which is the most proactive quadrant, so that all the other quadrants eventually get taken care of. And they get taken care of by being able to build things like systems, right? That is probably the most effective way, even with investing, by simply setting something up on auto pay or auto debit, whatever it is. That'll help you to be able to invest without really thinking about it. That's something that I do with an app called Acorns. What it does is every month it takes out X amount of dollars and it puts it into the total stock market for me. All right. So what does this mean? Well, you need to start giving your task a time slot. Stop putting things off. When you notice that you're saying, hey, I'll do that later, play a game with yourself. See if you can stop what you're doing and do it right now. See if you can do it, let's say, in 2 hours or the next 24 hours. Shorten the gap, shorten the amount of time that you're giving yourself to do a task, and let's see if we're able to do it. And with those items, even something called the daily time box, you can Google that and click images as well. These are just simple tasks that will, again, help you to be able to put first things first so that you're not lying to yourself by saying, I'll do that later. So I want to go over again the 3 lies that you're telling yourself that's keeping you from success. And the first one is saying things like, you're not ready. Well, guys, a lot of people, I can even say all of us, are not ready, but that's why we try to get ready, right? Trust that you'll be able to get through this storm because you've gotten through previous storms. The second one is that it costs too much. Guys, I believe that you know where to put your money. I believe that you know that, well, if I cut back on my leisure activities, my entertainment activities, maybe I'll be able to afford this $97 a month thing, right? Or this $200 a month thing, or this $1,000 a year item, whatever it is. And again, the thing, it should be things that are going to move your life forward. It should be valuable content, whether it's through coaching, conferences, webinars, so many different things, right? Put those first things first. Trust me when I say you could find the way. And then last one, I'll do it later. Guys, we all say that, right? And doing it later is a bad way to try to be proactive. It's a bad way to build habits, and it's definitely going to keep you from being successful. So to counteract that, there's 2 things that I gave you. One of them being the Eisenhower Time Matrix. You can Google that and click on images. And the second one is the daily time box activity, right? Google that, click images. You can save that as well. These 2 items alone will help you with your time management. And again, make sure you put time and deadlines to the tasks that you're assigning yourself. And then step back and watch the data being you. So this is Coach Wells. And again, these are the 3 lies that you're telling yourself. And these are the 3 things that you can actually do to help you define success. All right, guys, I'll see you later.